So I am so excited to be sharing with you all today, episode numero tres. So we have Ed, well, there was Ed, but
Yeah.
so we have Ed and Stacia Gowans. They are based out of Dallas, Texas. So we all I've been so excited. I actually received some questions for you, but I'm going to submit those to you later because it's so much information that we want to cover in the 30 minutes that we have allotted to us. So I first want to welcome you to the For the Love of You series, and tell us who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll get started.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you. So I'm Stacia Gowans, and I am originally from Lansing, Michigan, where our two wonderful hosts are from as well. So I grew up in that area and attended Michigan State University, where I met my wonderful husband on campus. And we have two adult children. Our son Christopher is 23, and our daughter Alexa is 21. So we are super duper blessed. We've been in the Dallas area for the last 9 years, and I am a marketing professional with a healthcare staffing organization, and have been there just since September doing some wonderful things. So thanks so much for having us. We're so excited.
Absolutely. Ed?
All right, thank you. Once again, thanks, guys, for having us on the show. We look forward to participating in this discussion and forum. I'm Ed Gowans, Stacia's husband. I, too, am from Michigan. I was born and raised mostly in Detroit. And like Stacia said, we both went to Michigan State. I have a degree in mathematics, and I've been working in the IT field for nearly 30 years now. And I work for a small financial services where I'm a director of a small team of business analysts.
Wow, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you guys. As I stated at the beginning of the show before the guests, we welcomed our guests today. They are the authors of We Redo. And the purpose of For the Love of You series is for you to hear different perspectives from different couples from all different types of backgrounds and share their experiences. And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we think when we get married, we're young in love, to our boo thing, our boo ski, that every day is the honeymoon, that every day we're just going to have hot sex. We're going to have home cooked meals every night at a certain time. We're going to sit at the table, and that we will be just living in a happiness and bliss all the rest of our days together. And we know that there are moments in life, in our marriage, that we're waiting to exhale. And so what we want you all to share with us and share whatever you feel comfortable sharing is that before we even get started, we know that there are moments that we reflect back on the happiness, the peace, the joy, and the ugly parts of marriage, that the tendency is you hang up the phone or you end this broadcast, and then you start to feel some type of way. So to avoid that from happening, we're going to insert a disclaimer right here. So at the beginning, at the end of the show, what I'm going to have you guys do is each tell each other a moment that took your breath away. That when Ed took your breath away, and then when Stacia took your breath away, and we'll end the same way. So we start positive, we get to the nitty gritty, and then we will end positive. Amen?
Perfect. Amen. I love it. Oh gosh, a moment that my husband took my breath away. There have been quite a few, to be honest with you. But I think I'd rather talk about the little things that he does that take my breath away all the time. Because I think in marriage, oftentimes we think there are these big moments and there have to be these big overtures and to-dos. And I really feel like, and part of this is probably how he was raised. He was raised by a single mom who prepared him for life, right? So I have never had to ask him for help for anything, whether it's going to the grocery store, changing babies' diapers, helping to figure out where these kids were going to go to college. Those little moments where he's always there, quite frankly, do take my breath away when I think about it. So there have been big moments where, I remember one of his favorite ones is we were young, married, and still broke. You know how that is. Yeah. We had our first child within the week before our first anniversary. So we've almost always been married with children. And he gave me a Coach purse, girl, a Coach purse with the matching Coach wallet. And I ran all around our little townhouse, rolling on the floor. I was so super happy that he had done that for me because he worked really, really hard to make sure we could buy the house that we were in before our son was born. So I guess that was a moment that took my breath away too. So there's quite a few, but you know, I think it's really incumbent upon us sometimes as spouses to think about the little moments every day and the things that our spouses can do to take our breath away and not to take those for granted.
Yes. Yeah.
That's some good stuff. Yeah, for me, like Stacia said, there's so many moments, there's so many things that we share. I mean, we've been married literally going on 25 years, so there's lots of moments to choose from. For me, I think one moment I remember is just her planning my 40th birthday party. I kind of knew something was up, but when she surprised me with it, and the fact that she got some of my friends from out of town to actually come up and be a part of it, that was awesome because I wasn't expecting that. I kind of expected like, oh, we'll do like a little dinner, we'll have some of our local friends, but a lot of my couple of my friends from Atlanta, some friends from Detroit, and
all
family, and the family, and they all showed up, and I thought that was great. I think for us, like she said, the little moments, it's just like our sense of humor. Just we together, when it's just us. I mean, we think we're comedians, right? We can finish each other's sentences. We can crack the same jokes. We pull the same movie quotes and use them. So it's always been great to have that kind of relationship where we connect that way. And I think one of the things I'm always impressed with, Stacia is literally a music jukebox. I don't care what song comes on, whatever it is, Stacia knows the words, the lyrics. I mean, I'm almost thinking like you might as well be writing the music. I mean, because you know it so well, the chorus, the bridge. I'm like, how do you have all that in your head to remember these? And listen, I'm talking about rock music, I'm talking about pop, I'm talking about everything. I just like she's a human jukebox. And we're in the car sometimes. I'm like, I don't even need the radio. I can just listen to Stacia. She's like, oh, this is my song, and she'll get into her mode. I'm like, okay, she's feeling it. But I always find that amazing when she could just rattle off a song off the top of her head, and it's just amazing sometimes.
I would be a lot smarter if I could get some of those lyrics out of my head and fill it with new knowledge. But
I love it. I think that we absolutely co-sign what you're saying because we had this conversation yesterday. We went to the dollar store, my favorite place to be. And we were I said, we were getting out of the car. And I said to Reggie, which I call him El Patron, and or mi papi, Oh, but that's just for us. Any viewers, don't see my husband call him papi or El Patron. This is just a love language.
Right.
We were at that. We were exiting our vehicle, and I said to him, I said, I feel so emotional. He was like, why? I said, because there are so many things that you do that take my breath away. Like you don't like going to the dollar store, but I like to find these little trinkets and things.
Right.
And it's those moments like he was singing the song, and I was like, I love that you know all the lyrics of these songs. Like I said, so it's those moments that take my breath away. And similar to what you guys were stating, I said, well, sometimes we think it has to be a big to that. And it's those moments of just gentleness, of kindness, of thoughtfulness that I love. And then he was like, thanks, babe. Well, come on, babe. I don't want to hear about you crying.
Let's just go into this dollar store and get it over with.
Exactly. Anything you want to share? Before I continue?
You guys have said it all.
My goodness. So I'm really excited to share with you guys today and have you all share. So it's pretty much your floor. When I posted about having you guys on, several questions came in, but I want you guys, before we dive into those, I want you guys to share what you feel comfortable sharing about your story. Tell us first how Redo was birthed. Let's start there.
Yeah, that's great. So probably about 5 or 6 years ago, he's better with timing than I am. We did a little staycation here in the Dallas area at a place called the Gaylord. It's a huge hotel, gorgeous, scenery inside and out. And we did a little staycation there for Valentine's Day. And we'll talk a little bit more about the details of the book, but we've experienced this a long, long time ago, right, by this point in time. And we said we should really write a book. Should write a book about our experiences because I am sure other people have gone through these same things and didn't feel like they had anyone to talk to because we didn't feel like we had anyone to talk to. And so fast forward to coronavirus, right? So life got in the way. We didn't create the time and the space for us to actually, fulfill that promise of writing the book that we absolutely felt, God was telling us to write this book. And, fast forward to coronavirus, we couldn't go anywhere, right? We were all locked in our houses on weekends, all during the day. And I said, this is a perfect opportunity. Our kids are no longer in the house, so we're not even concerned about, cooking for them or shuttling them to activities. We have nothing but time. And it's time for us to finally tell this story. And he immediately said, okay, let's do it. And it really got us to the point of, it was very cathartic writing the book, right? Even though we had to relive some very difficult experiences for us, the one thing that I can say is that even though we had to go back to those places, I didn't feel the same way, that I felt when it happened. So that raw pain wasn't there, even though I was literally reliving the experiences, rereading the experiences, retelling the experiences. That raw pain didn't exist anymore. And I'm just so grateful to God that he has enabled us to have such a strong relationship with him individually and as a couple, that he held our hand all the way through it, including releasing the book, right? It's one thing to write it. It's another thing to say, we're actually going to put this story into the world. Other people, and y'all know how people are judgy, right? And, we've forever heard, you guys are the perfect couple. Well, this was going to absolutely destroy that, right? And so we really had to trust God that, he wouldn't have told us to do this if we weren't supposed to do this. So that's kind of how the book was born, out of an idea from several years ago. But we finally had the bravery to just do it.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that I think for us, it was, my questions about it was just, what was our purpose for doing it? Were we trying to get something from it, or were we, what story were we going to tell? And I think us having that dialogue and continue talking about, okay, we went through this, but how many other people are experiencing this or have experienced this? And I think one of the outcomes of this book is just, for people, once they read it, just seeing that you can have a traumatic experience, or you can have just some heartache in your relationship, but you can recover from it, and you can come out the other side stronger and better as a couple. And I think that was one of the things that when we talked about it, we tried to say, okay, well, we're going to put ourselves out there, like she said, and then we're going to tell this story. But really, it's the redemption part and the rediscovery part that I think is just as important as the admission of, what brought us to a certain point where we thought we were over, but we came back from that. And now we're at a position where, although not perfect, we're definitely in a better position. And, it's like we came out of a cloud when all of this happened. And it seemed like, this was a great story to tell, and it would add value to people so that they can understand, hey, I'm going through something. How do I deal with it? How do I manage this? How can I get through?
Yeah.
And then it was a little bit therapeutic for us a little bit to write this. And I think probably maybe a little closure as well, to just kind of like go back through it, relive it, have conversations as we're writing stuff and editing things. So it actually kind of like really helped us. And it was hard initially at first, but once we kind of got over that, and once we started, getting into the details of the book, and then actually what do we need to do to publish it and everything, that kind of took over. But for us, actually writing it was difficult, but we got through it. And now, here are the results of it. So we're ecstatic about that.
Awesome.
This is about them.
I know it is about them, but I just want to hear your feedback. But it is about you. One thing I want to say is that when I first received the book, I started to read the chapters with Reggie, and I said, "Wow, do you realize that one study we had read several years ago? That one study said that every 13 seconds, divorce is filed in America." Wow. And I thought, as soon as I started reading your book, I thought, how powerful and compelling that you are helping to protect people if they receive it with an open heart. Come with an open mind. Their hearts are not hardened, and they're willing to look for healing and restoration. That you are protecting people from being a statistic, one of those.
Yeah.
And we were that statistic. And so it was I'm telling you, I had the ugly cry when I read the book. I don't mean, because again, you think when you get married and you're like, I'm crying, but it's the ugly cry.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And that's when the waiting to exhale moments, they're not on the big screen or when you're watching the DVD or watching them on Netflix as rewinds. They're in your living room, they're in your bedroom, and
that's
they're
right.
in your lives. So we forget that we're saved, that we're sanctified, that we're filled with the Holy Spirit, because we want to act and respond 100% of the flesh, and then we're later. So
yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, everything that you just said is such a testimony, because there were times during our experience with, I call it infidelity times 2, right? There's nobody sitting here in front of you that didn't betray their marital vows. And, it was so interesting because there were so many times, particularly when I found out about Ed's infidelity, that I wanted to shut myself, in a hole. I wanted to shut myself in my room. I did not want to go to church. I mean, that's I tell it now and it's funny, but he would always say, babe, it's Sunday, are we going to go to church? And I was so angry at everyone, including God. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be in church. He doesn't love me. Why do I want to go to church? If he loved me, none of this would be happening to me, right? Because you make it all about yourself. And we forget that, Jesus suffered. What makes us think we're not going to suffer, right? We're told in the book we're going to have crosses to bear, and that we have to demonstrate the type of unconditional love that God shows us every single day. But when it comes time to actually do it, man, it is very difficult. And so I remember, and I think I recount in the book at one point in time, we're literally in church. The pastor is preaching, and we loved our pastor there in Indiana. The pastor is preaching, and he's talking about how good God is. And I'm literally sitting in the pew. I have the kids between Ed and I, because I don't want to stay anywhere near him. And I remember saying, you're not good, because if you were, you wouldn't let this happen to me. But now when I look back on it, I was in the place I needed to be, though. I was in church. I was hearing the word, even if I was trying to repel it, right? And so that was so important. I think as a part of our healing was that obedience, because sometimes you have to just be obedient until your feelings can catch up with it, right? And so I'm just so thankful that even though I didn't really want to be there, God still made sure I was in the house. So that's a really important thing. And then the other thing I want to mention about that is I feel like it actually strengthened my relationship with the Lord, because I learned I could be angry with him. It's a real relationship, just like any other relationship, right? You can be angry with your parents. You can be angry at your kids. You can be angry with your spouse. And I learned you can actually be angry at your Heavenly Father, and he still loves you. And he still provides for you and protects you, even if you're angry with him. So that was a really important lesson for me too, in terms of our personal relationship with the Lord.
I just highlight one thing for us, or at least for me. I think the key word that comes up to me is this resolve, right? Having to admit and then having to deal with it on her side, the infidelity, just being willing to kind of understand that and consume that, and then decide, what are you going to do about it? Right. How are you going to handle? Is your reaction going to be, like you said earlier, Cathy, acting in the flesh? Am I going to let my anger and my frustration just be the thing that control me and then walk away from this marriage? Or am I, as Stacia just said, am I going to listen to God and understand that God sacrifices for us every day? And, we're at fault for so many things, little things, big things. He doesn't care. We know we're not perfect. And so sometimes that resolve is needed to understand and really be patient. As she was working through her issues, as I was working through my issues, as we were working on our things together, it took a lot of that. And that's the thing I think we sometimes miss in there. As we talked about earlier, you always think it's going to be happy, you think it's going to be rainbows and sunshines and puppy dogs. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's dirty, sometimes it's messy. And you got to be willing sometimes to get in there and get in there and work on that together. And then you can finally, pull each other up. And it's a together thing. I mean, when Stacia was going through it, I didn't just give up on her and say, well, listen, if you don't want to go to church, fine, I'm just going to leave. It'd be like, hey, babe, we got to go. I'm trying to pull her along. I'm trying to do the things necessary because I knew that that was what was required. And sometimes you have to accept that. So to me, that key word is really resolve. And that's what I think we exhibited. It maybe took us a time to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
But once we committed to it and understood that really where we wanted to go with the marriage and how, if we can make it through this, we can make it through anything. And it's really been a testament to just, God's will of like, if we listen and are obedient to him, we can get through anything.
That's so good. So powerful.
I want to ask you guys, when you're in a relationship, you'll go through adversity and you'll have hard times and traumatic times. And you have to go through a healing process. And sometimes it's longer than you might realize or want it to be.
Yeah.
It's a two-part question. What began your healing process and where are you at with it now?
What began our healing process? Well, if I had to answer, I would say this guy here was somewhat relentless. Maybe it was that resolve about going to counseling, right? Some issues that you're going to face in your marriage, you cannot get out of on your own, right? And even if you have a relationship with God, that doesn't mean that he doesn't want you to seek godly counsel from others that know him. And so I would say that he was probably more ready to attend counseling than I was. Again, I was really mad at first. And so I didn't want help. I literally didn't want anybody to tell me how to fix the marriage. In my mind, I was like, I really don't care if it lasts or not. But again, I was obedient. And we've been to probably 3 different counselors now. The first one that we went to, I'll never forget one of her first homework assignments, because oftentimes, almost all the time, every issue we face in marriage is because of communication, lack thereof, as well as childhood traumas, and we all have them. We all have them. And we don't necessarily know how to tap into what they are and how to resolve them. So I'll give you this example. She gave us a homework assignment. And her homework assignment was, I want you to go home and I want you to each write down your top 10 needs. What do you need in a relationship? And I don't think anybody could tell at the time. I started sweating. Just hearing the word need made me so uncomfortable. And I had to sit back to the fact that my parents got divorced when I was 12. And my dad was always around, always continued to, provide for us and see my sister and I. But my mother was strong, smart, independent. If she had to, she could have taken care of us by herself, right? And so I saw my mom, go to graduate school, work, nights, weekends, summers as a teacher, fix things around the house. She could do everything in my mind. So I didn't need anybody. And that was one of those vows that we talk about in the book. It's very dangerous to make vows to yourself about what you will never do.
Right.
Because who are you to tell God what he's not going to put you through? Right. But that need was one of the vows. I don't need anybody. I can take care of myself. I don't need anything. Well, one of the things that she said to us when she gave us that assignment was, if you cannot articulate and identify your needs, how do you expect your spouse to even begin to meet them? Because you don't even know what they are. And so it was hard. I didn't like it at all, but I did my assignment. And I think that was very illuminating, because if I couldn't articulate and communicate to Ed, how could he ever possibly hope to meet them? So I think that was a really important first step, Reggie, in terms of our healing. I'll let you do the next part in terms of where you feel our healing began, and then I'll circle back to where we are now.
Okay, so I think for me, I think of 2 things. So for us, I think the healing began when you really start to think about, I want to say, forgiveness, right? It's not only just forgiveness for the other person, but sometimes for yourself. Like, I had to forgive the act that I did. And that's a hard thing. People, we probably all internalize things, and then we fester on that. And that is the thing that can be very destructive to a relationship. So just learning to forgive yourself along with your mate. And really, when we talk about forgiveness, it's really forgiven. It's like, God has his word, like you're supposed to throw into the sea for forgetful. It's not something that you're going to continually bring up, but you do have to heal over it. But you have to forgive, and you have to kind of let those things go. The other thing I think is important is realizing where happiness is supposed to come from. I think in the book, Station talks a lot about we both have perception of happiness. Like Station's supposed to make me happy. And I'm sure vice versa. She thinks that I'm supposed to make. That's not going to be healthy long term. You can't always expect that person to make you happy 100%. If you're always counting on that, the moment that a little bit of disappointment happens, that's going to blow up, and it's going to escalate, or it's going to fester, and it's going to make it more difficult, and it's going to be a bad place. So when we heard from our pastor a lot about that.
That's a word right there.
Just learning about just that happiness there's more to happiness than someone making you feel a certain way, and you counting on that feeling, that need that they owe you that. That's where you can be wrong. And I think the healing can begin once you accept that person's they're not the only place where you get your happiness from. I mean, we know we get it from God, but you do it from your experience, from your involvement and everything. It's not one person giving you, right? Because sometimes happiness is what we do for others, and how we, express our love outwardly to others, right? That's also another place for happiness. So just not depending on that one person. So I'll let you.
That's important. So that's really important. And I mean, I think it has to do with where we are now, because we really are not in the place, like I said earlier, where any of this brings up that raw emotion and pain. That's how you know you're healed, right? I have read, I'm a part of one of these Facebook groups about marriage, and I've seen so many posts just in the last month about, how do you heal from infidelity? What do you do with this? What do you do with that? And there are so many people that rush to divorce. Almost everybody. That's the first thing. That's the one thing I would never tolerate. And I like to say, don't put out the one thing you would never tolerate, because I can guarantee you God is going to probably put you in that situation to see what you're going to do. But I feel like we're in such a better place now that we literally do feel like we can help other people. We are not counselors. So that's the first thing we tell people. You need to actually go to somebody who is trained in this that can help you. If you are a Christian counselor, all of ours have been Christian counselors, and they have been absolutely phenomenal. Facebook is definitely not where you go to get your advice on marriage, but it's not where you go. But one of the lessons that we got from our current pastor suggests that you should go to counseling when you're happy. When things are going really well, right? Because how do you go from great to greater, right? That's what we're trying to do in our relationship with Christ. That's what we're trying to do in our relationship with each other. And I think a lot of times people think counseling is just when you're struggling. So it's important to have those regular check-ins with each other. When the kids were home, we scheduled meetings on Sundays to talk about the business stuff. And then we had date nights. That was not for business stuff. Right? If you don't schedule those things and you aren't intentional about them, you can slip back into old patterns and old bad behaviors. So during those times, it's time for us to connect, for us to communicate about maybe something that did happen during the week that wasn't great, but we just kind of breezed over it because we had to get through the week. It's really important to be intentional so that you can stay in that healed place. So we've tried to put some things in place that solidify our healing and our time to communicate.
So many things that you covered. We may have to do a part 2 because it's so much to cover, but it's helping us so much. I know the way that my husband, his mind works. And so when he is in awe and intrigued at the story, he just is so quiet. So I love that because he's a deep thinker, and I love that. That's why we have him here. A couple things you covered, and it was about the space that you're in now and how important it is to, correct me if I'm wrong, but change it up. So you incorporated new things, so that way you don't go back to traditional ways that you had or routines that you had. And when I speak, we've been speaking to so many couples, and sometimes something happened 8 years ago or 15 years ago, and they still will. No, they'll eat tears taste their tears for breakfast, and then as soon as something comes up, and they'll say, "Okay, well, we're gonna eat rewinds for dinner." And they keep bringing up the past. And so I was trying to give that to them in that analogy so they understood that Do you see how that sounds like? That food's old. You're going to get sick if you eat that food that was served so many years ago. And then try to help them, get them in a better space. I also believe what's important is that we don't put enough thought into spiritual warfare. And we didn't. And, I want to encourage every couple that's watching, all of our viewers that are watching, or someone that's in a relationship, is that when you're in a relationship, the same God that you were laboring in prayer for to heal your children, to heal you, the same God that you were saying, God, I need this job. We will have no place to live. We don't have this job. God, I thank you for a month, for a roof over my head. That same God can manifest a miracle in your marriage if you enter the ring of spiritual warfare. And without entering the ring of spiritual warfare, how can we expect to get the W in our marriage?
Right.
We don't
have true.
Amen.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. And, the other thing that you have to understand is that the best picture of unconditional love on earth is a marriage.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the devil is going to attack? He doesn't want people to see that. He wants people to be selfish and to think, well, if I'm not happy, I'm out. If I'm not getting everything that I need, I'm out. But that's not how God treats us, right? And so it's important to remind yourself sometimes that you are fighting a spiritual battle, because sometimes it's really just not about you. I know that's painful, but it's not about you. It's not even about your marriage. It's about the devil trying to destroy something that really demonstrates to the world how God loves us. And every single day, no matter what we do to him, there he is, and he loves us. Right. And so that's really, really important to remember. I think another piece of advice we got early on in our marriage, and I think this was from our church in Virginia, but our pastor told us all the time, it is really important as a couple that you like each other. Not just love each other. Okay. You like each other. You like the same movies, you play together, not all the time. It's okay to have healthy relationships, the wife and the husband with their friends. But it's really important that you like each other and don't just focus on those kids, because those kids are leaving.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, what happens is the kids leave, they realize they didn't like each other. And so guess what? They have nothing in common. They haven't built their relationship. And so they really do feel like, oh, this is an easy out, because we don't even like each other. We don't know each other. Now, that's never a problem we have had. We have always liked each other and like the same things. We're friends. I mean, we're really, truly friends. There is nobody that I would want to tell anything to more than him. Right. And so it's funny because I used to be, especially in high school, I was a secret keeper. If you told me don't tell anybody, trust and believe I was not telling anybody. Now as an adult and as a married woman for the last 25 years, I'll still have friends that are like, now you can't tell anybody. I'm like, you do understand the disclaimer me. I am telling Ed. I tell him everything. So don't tell me anything that I cannot tell him. So that is really important too, is that you like each other.
Yes.
No, I was gonna say on that thread that a lot of people during the COVID, when it really was at its peak, before this peak, when people had to stay home together, couples realized that they did not like each other. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a big deal. So,
absolutely.
And you got to be ready to grow through your different phases too, right? I mean, like Stacia and you guys alluded to earlier, I mean, there's different phases, right? There's marriage when you first start out young and new, then there's the addition of a family, then it's the growth of the family as a kid gets older and you're involved in activities and stuff. And as Stacia alluded to, I mean, we had to at some point, figure out time to work together, set time aside for one another, have our own little separate date nights. Don't be consumed by the kids and their activities and that life. And even as, we were involved in church, not letting that take away from us, the marriage. I mean, it's good to be involved, but sometimes you got to know your boundaries and set those limits so that you don't really consume that away from your time in your marriage life. And now I think having those boundaries and having that set really has been wonderful for us because now the kids are gone. We got one grown, one in college finishing up. Now, like she said, we really enjoy. We're like, this is great. This is fun.
This is exactly what we've been waiting for.
We have some fun. Well, we ain't got to worry about nobody but just us. Well, this is great. We can eat what we want. Everybody complain. Stuff is where I left it at when I put it there. So being ready for that next phase of life, always think about planning what's going on with your life as life changes and adjusts, being flexible enough to kind of grow with that as well.
Life is full of timings and seasons, and I'm thankful for the time that we're spending today sharing together on this. I'm going to have definitely a link for your book inside of this broadcast. I also want to share, like in reference to what you're saying, so much of what you're communicating, we parallel. So we were involved in ministry for over 10 years. So Reggie was on, we were on the evangelism leadership team. He was in the choir. I was a greeter. Then we were both on the single staff. And so we had Monday Woman in the Word, Wednesday Bible study, Sunday service. We went to the 9/11 and the 6. And so when I tell you that when we look back on it, we thought, well, we have to take, Reggie reminded me, he was like, well, we have to take care of our house in order for us to have a firm foundation. And it took like 10 years plus for us to get to that point. Yeah. And because then you're facing each other and you're like, oh God, similar to careers, you've been so busy on the go, 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 go. So that's what we've been doing, is making sure that we schedule time for date nights. You know, we're approaching our second anniversary this next weekend. So
great!
Congratulations.
Yay!
Little guy, you know, gotta love mix a little pleasure with business. But it's so important that you said schedule those dates, and I love it. I do want to touch on two things before we wrap up, and that's that what you said, because one of the questions is, my wife invests more time in the children and they're a priority versus me being a priority. So I know that you touched on it, and so from a man's or from another man's perspective, share how, because we discuss this all the time as far as children and putting all of our energy into them, because one day it's going to grow up.
You know, I mean, when you have your relationship with your spouse, you have to, and you have your children, the things that they have to do, you have to realize that your spouse has to come first, because your children are going to grow up, they're going to have their own lives, they're going to get married, they're going to have their own families, and, you know, face it, you're going to be an afterthought.
Right.
You know, when they feel like they got a little bit of time, you know, and they don't have nothing to do.
That's right.
Free, or they need something, they'll come by.
Right,
so,
right.
But you have to realize that day will come. And so you have to, you know, make sure that you cherish your relationship you have with your spouse, and always know that they need to be number one. And keep that in mind with every decision that you make. You know, because there could be, you know, arguments where, you know, sometimes we'll have those arguments. You know, you know, I'm like, wait a minute, you're taking their side. You don't take their side. Right. You know, I'm the one who's gonna be here. You know,
that's right.
When you get old and you can't get out of the bed, they're not gonna come help you get out of the bed.
That's right.
I'm gonna be
not getting old.
I'm not planning on doing that.
No, but that's absolutely, there's so much truth to that. That's so true. I do. I'm Mama Bear. So in a heartbeat, I'm like, oh, hold on. Well, honey, I see what their perspective is. What they're saying is this. He was like, they're grown. So no, let me.
Well, you know, the other thing that's really important that sometimes we forget, but we shouldn't, is that we're also modeling for our children what healthy relationships look like.
So good.
And so we want them to see, you know, we made the determination before we had children, you know, we wouldn't hide entirely. You know, if we had a disagreement, we wouldn't hide that from them, because it's not healthy. People disagree. Right. And we wanted them to see, even if we happened to have had a vehement disagreement, that we woke up in the morning and mommy and daddy were both still there. And mommy and daddy, you know, continued to function well as a couple and well as their mom and dad. And so we felt like that was important. And even through this experience, you know, one of the biggest, probably the biggest hurdle for us deciding we would publish this book was we knew we would have to tell our children first what happened.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, we built up all of this. Oh my gosh, what are they going to say? They're going to be devastated. And both of our children were like, we're really proud of you guys for doing this.
Yes.
I'm like, what? And they were like, well, number one, you made it. You made it. And you are willing to be vulnerable enough and share, even with your children, you know, that you're not perfect, that you went through a really big struggle and how to get through that. So now we feel like we have a roadmap. When we go through difficulties in our future relationships, we have a roadmap. Our parents went through what many people consider to be the worst when you're doing the better for worse vows, and you made it. And through it all, you did protect us. You did shelter us from a lot of the specifics of what happened. But we have a roadmap in you now, so it's really important that we're modeling for our kids all the time. And so that mom or that wife that's modeling it, the kids are the only thing that are important. She doesn't want her kids to grow up and treat their relationships the exact same way. Right.
And I'll just add on that too. I think for us, having a son. So having a son and really sharing with him, like, it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to communicate. Yeah. You don't have to hold it in. Actually, holding it in is bad. And that can lead to difficulties within a relationship. So I think, us being able to have that crucial conversation with them and sharing with them was also beneficial for our son, because, as men, as society, especially American society, tells you to suck it up, don't cry, be strong, all these things that really, there's a time for that. And sometimes there's a time to open up and be willing to be vulnerable and be willing to be shared, to share your feelings and not just hold on to it and think that there's no one there. And then also, as we talked about in the book, one of our challenges was, realizing that even with us, we had a village out there that was willing to help us and be engaged. But you have to let people know
if we have reached out. Yeah.
Right. And now we learn so much. People are like, I didn't know you were going through that. Oh my God, gosh. We would have been there for you guys. So
some of our best friends when we told them about the book, they just kept looking at us. I had no idea. I'm like, I know, because we didn't want you to have any idea.
I love it.
Think about that perfect image. I mean, that was the problem, right? We be like, oh, you guys are so well, but we really weren't well.
Yeah.
We're better now.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Well, our time is running out, but I do want to say this, is that we thank you so much for your transparency and for your courage, because it takes courage to put yourself out there and to not only write it, but to publish it, and then to come on a platform and say, this is where I was, but this is where we were. You stated something profound, that you're the roadmap. And so I love that. So you already has created the roadmap. And as long as we keep God individually and collectively as our focus, then we'll win it as long as we keep him in it. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
100%.
So thank you guys so much for coming on. I'm so happy that I feel like we could go on and on for hours.
I know, we could. And if you want to, we'll come back. It's perfectly fine.
So much. I will definitely include the links. In closing, I want to say this to each and every one of you, is that I'm going to be including a link because now we reference the pandemic and most cities are closed across the United States. So I've reached out to actually counseling centers that are offering virtual therapy sessions. So I'm going to list the information, and I encourage each and every one of you to, if you need the help, or even if you don't, you're at station of reference, you're in a great place. Still, make a call and allow God to manifest a miracle in your marriage, in your relationships. Amen? Okay.
I love it.
You can purchase their amazing, jaw-dropping, it is a captivating book. And you can purchase that on Amazon. It's We Redo. I have all the links available as well. And so thanks you guys so much again. We send you guys love and light as always.
Bye. All right, thanks, Reggie. Appreciate it. Thanks.